Welcome, everybody, to our midpoint in the festival. The PDX Jazz team always makes a big note of this day and time where we all go, we're halfway through it. We're halfway through it. It's been a wonderful festival for us. We're so happy to have audiences back out at all of our live events. Tonight's show is one of the anchor shows for us, and one of our most special shows for us is we have a whole entire house full of jazz legends tonight in front of you. And this is a really special addition to the show because we have our local friend and KOIN TV anchor, Ken Boddie. Please give Ken a big hand. Ken is going to host a very special conversation with these legends, and we are so happy to have everybody here. Ken, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, and give yourselves a round of applause for coming out and listening to live jazz tonight. It is my pleasure to be able to speak with these legends of jazz who have come together and are going to make this PDX Jazz Festival extremely special. The Cookers are here tonight. Right on their website, the first thing it says is experience counts, especially in jazz. We have lots of experience here. Altogether, more than 250 years of experience playing with people. I know I probably shouldn't have said that. But that is a lot of experience in jazz history. And I'd like to introduce the Cookers before we actually begin our conversation. Billy Harper on saxophone. Cecil McBee on bass. George Cable's on piano. Eddie Henderson on trumpet. Billy Hart on drums. And the youngsters in the group, David Weiss on trumpet. And Donald Harrison on saxophone. All right. We got Craig Handy here. Yes, sir. Now, this group was solidified in 2007. They played with a lot of people, and I'll just go through some of them because this is just a who's who of jazz history here. Herbie Hancock, Charles Lloyd, Keith Jarrett, Bobby Hutcherson, Max Roach, Art Blakey, Sonny Rollins, Joe Henderson, Freddie Hubbard, Dexter Gordon. Who did I miss? A lot of people. You've made over 1,000 records, or been on over 1,000 records altogether, played many jazz festivals around the world. Yes, that's worth a round of applause there. And you're all accomplished arrangers, composers, writers in your own right. So give us a feel for how you guys came together. How did the Cookers become the Cookers? Who tells that story?
It's actually. It's for you. It's a long story, actually. I was approached maybe in 2002 or 2003 to put together a Night of the Cookers / celebration / Freddie Hubbard birthday party for a club in Brooklyn. And I guess the point was Freddie was going to come in and MC and blow out a birthday cake or something. And we got James Spaulding and Pete LaRocca and Larry Ridley, all the guys that were on the original Night of the Cookers record. And I think Craig was on it, actually. Craig was on it. And Kiani Zawadi and Ronnie Matthews, I think, and Freddie Hubbard alumni. And my takeaway from that gig was it was a lot of fun, and James Spaulding and Pete LaRocca sounded incredible. So we decided to do a little more of that. And around the same time, I began working with Charles Tolliver and his big band with Billy Harper. And at some point, I had an idea to combine these two things, bring in Charles Tolliver and Billy Harper into the band and bring their music in and have Pete LaRocca and James Spaulding. And maybe at that point, George was doing it too, I think. And somehow that all turned into this. Over a couple of years, Pete LaRocca was mad at Charles Tolliver from something 30 years ago, and Charles, we actually just did a big band record for Blue Note Records, and he wanted to focus on that, and so forth and so on, and suddenly in 2007 we did a gig in Healdsburg, California, with this exact personnel, and from there we've been this thing. 15 years now.
So really, when you spend that time with so much time with the same people, traveling around, doing what you do, you become a family, right? You guys are family.
Sure. It's been awful good.
I'd like to say this. I think we were a family before we even started playing together, because so many of us have spent so many years playing with each other in different settings that we already kind of knew each other and had a musical and a friendship relationship. So this just was icing on the cake.
Now, we've gone through a tough couple of years with the COVID and everything, and I know, New York was hard hit by it. How did that change your music, your creative process, especially when you weren't able to get out there and perform live?
For me, I feel that my process was rather enhanced because I've for some time been a student of languages. I've gotten rather successfully understood in the Spanish language and also Japanese. And so that's. And also, I'm working on 4 compositions now. My piano's over there. So between the basketball games, football games, piano, and language, and practicing my bass, I've survived. Thank you.
What about some of the other members of the group? How did COVID and what we've come out of change your whole thing?
I think some guys took a nap for their first time in 20 years. Or longer, really, right? I mean, seriously, some of these guys have been on the road for 40 years straight with hardly any break.
Yeah, I can say for me that I started doing things that I've been avoiding for years. Like organizing office space and cleaning up the house and everything like that. But also, you have time to think. You sit down and play for me, play the piano. Daily, spend more time at the instrument, and have more time to think, and then binge watch some of those things that on YouTube or on Amazon Prime or something that I've been missing out on.
You have Netflix? You watch anything on Netflix? No Netflix. Yeah.
I'd just like to add to that. Since COVID really knocked the bottom out of the whole musical industry worldwide, for me personally, the thing that kept me together was the fact that all of us teach school at some musical institution in this country, and by actively thank you, and that's so important, for this generation to pass their knowledge out to younger generations coming up. It's really vital, because this ethnic tradition will become extinct like the dinosaurs if we don't pass that heritage on to the newer generation. So that inspires me. And also in this 2-year break, it has given me a chance to focus on, because it's such a rigorous lifestyle traveling, a traveling musician. A lot of people think, oh, it's so easy, fun and games. No, it's not. Believe me, because you travel all day. You get to another country. You just check into the hotel, go to the sound check, play the concert. The next day you're going to another country. So you don't really get a chance to take care of oneself. So this past 2 years has given me the opportunity to start thinking about my own physical health, my mental health, and in conjunction with teaching school also, the creative aspect of it has given me a nice balance to keep myself healthy. Yeah.
You talk about passing on the knowledge to the younger generation and teaching music as well. How is the younger generation receiving what you have to offer, and do they recognize that they're getting it from the best?
It's hard to say. I think sometimes it's tough for us to read them, partially, at least for me personally, I've never met a generation more enamored with their own generation. So, I don't personally mean that in general, but it could be true. I can't deny it. But what I mean is the musicians that mean the most to them are their generation or the generation immediately preceding them. So we've definitely done clinics and workshops where we see people Googling every time we make a reference or something like that. I think they want to learn, right? They want to learn. Yeah, they want to learn. And I think once you start teaching them, you can really draw them in, and I don't think anybody doesn't realize what they're being given. It's just, like I said, it's just it's a different. It's the same process, but somehow it's different. They're learning, but they're not learning in the same environment like these guys did. It's a different world. It's going to be a different thing for them when they go out there. But if they're with one of these guys, they definitely have some knowledge. Sometimes I wonder if they're well versed enough to understand what they're being given, or they've researched, the stuff they're giving them. Besides, they're getting a lot of stuff from these guys, but we also, I think what I'm trying to say is, we were curious, and I don't always see them curious. Everything's at their fingertips. So a lot of what motivated us, what about going, if you guys know who Barry Harris is, if you ever watched Barry Harris teach a class, he's still like, at 90, like, oh, wait a second, I can, it's an internal curiosity that I don't see as much, and I think that's part of what's happening. Like I said, I think they understand the value of what they're getting from these guys. But how they process it, how they continue on, I guess the other thing is once they leave school and then once they've learned everything, are they still curious? I've had people in a band where they learned a tune and they think that's the end. Okay, I learned a tune. And the guy like this is going to say, okay, I learned a tune, now what can I do? So it's just, maybe a different approach. I mean, I have to generalize to say something like this. I'm sure it's not everybody. But that's just some of the things I've noticed, at least, with these guys. I mean, some of them come out amazing still, so, you know, it still sort of works, right? Some of them are pretty good.
If I may, I think for me, I see like a variety of reactions, a variety of things happening. Some people, sometimes I'm really surprised at what young people know, the depth of their knowledge. I mean, what they know about the musical history, the names they pull out, and some of the records they mention. Or even if they know some of my pieces, it really shocks me that they know some things that were done many years ago. And then there are people who kind of are there mainly to show you what they know. So I think, you know, that's not new. I mean, I think all the time that I spent a lot of time at Port Townsend, not very far from here. And every year I see, you know, you can kind of tell. There are a lot of people who are really interested in music and jazz, and some people I've seen years later, I mean, like 15, 20 years later, who tell me, you know, who are playing now and whose CDs you may have in your home and who you may hear on the radio. And they may say, remember you told me this in the class, or I didn't know anything about this and you showed me this. And it's gratifying to me, and it gives me hope for the future of this music, because sometimes you really don't know when you talk to people. You don't know until years later, until the seed's planted. You don't know when you plant the seed, when you see something growing. Then you know later on. But I've always been very pleasantly surprised, because a lot of people, I've worked with a lot of musicians who are here at this festival in other workshops when they were students. So people, you know, that may be household names to you. So that's always gratifying to me. And then there are, of course, you know, because you study music, doesn't mean you have to be a professional. I think that's just that'll just add something to your life. So so for me, I'm pretty positive from what I see with young people.
I'm confused. Do you want me to answer as Craig Handy, or should I channel Donald Harrison? Because I can do a pretty good Donald Harrison doing Art Blakey.
Answer is Craig Handy.
Okay.
All right. Please do.
No, I won't go there. Well, first of all, let me just back up and say, during the pandemic, there was a lot of times, you know, there was a lot of time on my hands personally, because I'm not involved in teaching as much as these guys are. So it was a little rough during that period, but I also sat at the piano almost every single day, and so I have either started, completed, or nearly finished about 100 tunes. So I have a lot of sketches, mostly sketches, but there's some good ones in there. So that was what happened during the pandemic. But about the students, you know, I'm looking at YouTube, like everybody, like all of us, I would imagine. And, you know, you look and see people like Emmett Cohen and what he's done with Emmett's Place. You guys familiar with that? You know, he started out as a rent party. Yeah, it's amazing. He definitely deserves a lot of credit. And he's been going, I think, you know, I don't know how many weeks now, but almost every week since the pandemic started. And all the people that he's been showcasing have been mostly younger players. He's starting to reach out into an older demographic with musicians, but most of the guys are like between his age and a little bit older than him. And they have a lot of knowledge about what these guys have been doing, because they've studied it, you know, and they're very serious about it. So I think there's a pretty wide spectrum, or a pretty broad spectrum of students that range from the guys that are very in love with themselves and spend 5 hours a day on, you know, posting and, you know, shedding social media, And then there's the guys on the other end that have been actually shedding music and then, get to the social media aspect of it later, but actually take it very seriously too, and then everything in between. So I think I think we're in pretty good hands as far as that's concerned. And there was something else I wanted to mention about that, but yeah, I don't think that it's all, sort of on one side or the other. It's spread across.
Yeah.
I'd like to say one thing. I noticed when I came in, Craig got here before me, and he was playing the piano, and I can tell you he's gotten better.
Well, I know you came up during many of you came up during the New York jazz scene in the 60s, 70s. Are you still connected to New York, or do all of you have connections to New York now?
We all live in New York.
You all live in New York.
Well, New Jersey's too, but
Well, okay, we'll count Jersey as part of that as well.
some people do,
Some people don't, right?
Well, the New York Giants are in New Jersey, and the New York Jets are in New Jersey, so I guess we can.
All right, so you just include that as part of the greater New York metropolitan area then. Tell me what it was like to be part of that jazz scene now, then, and then what have you found now, especially in terms of just the feel of the scene, the people who are involved. How has it evolved?
Whoa, yeah, well. How has it evolved since what time?
Since the time that
I came to New York?
Yeah, when you were coming up, as opposed to now.
Well, I have a lot of musicians have different stories about how they started in New York. I had a hard time. I came there. I came from Texas with a car, and the musicians, when they looked at me, they said, "Oh man, no, this cat has a car." Everybody has a car in Texas, but so I was sort of. They kind of shunned me a little bit, but I had to fight to get in. I had to play, you know what I mean? And so I play with the most difficult musicians. If Philly Joe was playing somewhere, I came and sat in with Philly Joe. And then by the time I finished, they said, "Oh, okay, well, maybe he's supposed to be in." And then I sat in with another big name, and pretty soon they liked what I was doing, and they had to admit it. So that helped.
Yeah, how would someone else answer that question, just in terms of, New York jazz scene coming up as opposed to what you're seeing now in New York?
Okay, I want to talk again. I was born and raised in New York, but I was born in Brooklyn, and I was living in Queens. At 9 years old, I moved to Queens. So those are the outer boroughs. But sometimes that could be just like living in Portland. Because and you're, from New York, from Manhattan, most of the stuff was in Manhattan. So taking a bus and a subway, for me, was the deal getting into Manhattan. But still, we were around, I was able to go to hear music when I was 18. In New York at that time, 18 was the legal age. That means you can go to where alcohol is being sold. It's changed now because the kids from New Jersey and Connecticut would drive in, get drunk, and go back and get in accidents. So then I could go see Thelonious Monk at the 5 spot and he was there for about 4 months at a time, and with a double bill. These days you're lucky if you get 2 nights in a week at a club. There are a lot of performance spaces, which is nice because people really can focus on what's happening with the music. But then, I'd see Thelonious Monk with Mose Allison playing opposite him. or Charlie Mingus with Mal Waldron playing opposite him, or you could go see Train at the at Birdland, or you'd see Art Blakey all over the place. You know, that was, and you took that for granted. You know, those things, those are the days that when you had a group, a small group, or a group, well, this is relatively small group attitude. When you got your stuff together, by playing every night, you know, working together. So that's not so much the same now, but these days, with social media, you know, you can be in Paris at the Duc de Lombard. I mean, if you're in New York, you can watch something happening anywhere in the world, which is nice. But there's something about being in the same room as music, when the music is happening. Not only do you get to hear the music, but you can see the musicians making the music. You see, you know, their body language. For me, watching Thelonious Monk get up and kind of do his dance, you know, his shovel dance, and watch Mingus get mad at somebody who was talking in the audience, you know. That was great. On my prom night, I got to see Marion McPartland at the Hickory House. I got to see Pony Poindexter and Ornette Coleman and Lambert Hendricks and Bavon at the Jazz Gallery. You could walk around the street downtown. You could walk in any area, like if it's the Greenwich Village, there was a 5 Spot, the Village Vanguard, at some point Slugs, the Village Gate, you know, or you go uptown, it's Club Baron, Count Basie's, Minton's. You know, there are a lot of places, and New York is great for that because it's a walking city. Yeah, it's not quite the same, but places are opening now. Like they're not the same. Like what is it? There's Smoke, which is still kind of getting itself together. They're rebuilding stuff now. But there's Smalls, Mesro, and places like that where people can listen to music and see musicians be really close because the place is tiny. You know, jazz is alive. There are some places, I mean, it's like time is like a pendulum. You know, it goes, this one is great, and somehow it goes over here, and then you just wait a while, and it'll get better.
That's encouraging. That's encouraging to hear. We've only got a couple more minutes left before we actually hear you perform, but tell me about your latest music and whether we'll hear some of that tonight.
He's got one.
You're not going to answer.
What was the question?
Yes. Tell me about your latest music, your latest album, and you know what we can expect to hear from it tonight.
So maybe 4 or 5 months into the pandemic. Well, actually, right when the pandemic hit, we were about to go to Europe to do a 3-week tour that got canceled. And a few guys were already over there waiting to start the tour, and we had to get them home. It was it was an interesting time. But I don't know how the arc was here, but in New York, by July, that initial wave had started to die down. And I wouldn't say things were opening up, but things were starting to happen again a little bit. And we were all talking, you know, sort of like what guys were answering before, you know, like, we're practicing now, we're sleeping now, and but I can also sense people kind of getting restless. And I was wondering, you know, like I said earlier, guys who were on the road pretty much nonstop for 40 years, suddenly at home with nothing to really do. I remember talking to George about practicing, like we had been practicing for so many years to maintain what we had, to prepare for what we had coming up, and suddenly we can just practice to practice, and maybe like, oh, we can learn we can change our routines. But like I said, things were opening up a little bit. I was personally inspired by like the NBA going into a bubble, testing everybody and playing. And I said, well, we can make our own bubble. So we all got tested. We went up to upstate New York, and we used a club that was closed that we played at before, and we rehearsed up there a little bit, and then we went to Rudy Van Gelder's studio and made this record. Okay.
And the title of the record is?
Look Out.
Look Out.
Look Out. Sorry, there's an exclamation point. The record label likes like the 60s stuff and likes to keep it themed that way. And if you reckon all the old Blue Notes, whatever the title was, there was an exclamation point. But there's also a Seinfeld episode about exclamation points that messes. So look out, or something. Look out. But anyway, we all got ourselves tested, and we went to Van Gelder's partially because it's this legendary, wonderful studio, but also because it was a standalone place, and we can just drive door to door. We wouldn't have to be out in the world, really. We can just go to our little bubbles from here to here. And we did the record, and it's out. We'll play some tunes from it, but we have a lot of tunes. But we definitely play some music from the new record. And it's for sale out there. If you think we play pretty good, you can.
All right. Well, we are looking forward to hearing that, right? We're gonna let the cookers get ready for tonight's show. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for talking with the audience about jazz and your experiences. Ladies and gentlemen, the cookers.